Postcards from a Dying World, the podcast. For more than a decade, I've reviewed over 1,000 books that are mostly science fiction, horror, and bizarro. This feed will feature bonus audio I have produced over the years, as well as a monthly digest of reviews based on what I've read each month, plus the occasional bonus material about my own fiction. Thanks for listening. Okay, welcome to the Postcards from a Dying World Star Trek season finale roundup, which I'm going to start doing. This is the first one, but now every time there's a season of Star Trek that ends, I'm going to gather some nerds together and we're going to talk about it because it's Star Trek and it's awesome. And I want to be a part of the discussion. And I know you do too out there. So we're going to be talking about Star Trek Lower Decks Season 2, because that's just the most recent one that came out. And then hopefully I'll gather another panel of nerds for Prodigy coming up, which is of the animated shows, it's the one I'm most excited about. But we'll talk about that later. Let me introduce my panel to you. Sara Lynn Michener is well known to many Star Trek fans because she is one of the most vocal fans. That's how I discovered Sarah, was I kept seeing her on what I think it's like angry things that make Star Trek fans angry that they invented themselves, I think is the name of the Facebook group that I first discovered Sarah. And then I heard you on Geek's Guide to the Galaxy, which is one of my favorite podcasts. And you're a Star Trek fan with many opinions. And so I've had you in mind since I first thought of this. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Very excited to be here.
And Anna Walsh was suggested to me by another panelist here. And Issa suggested Anna. Anna, you are a huge Lower Decks fan. So yes. I suspect you're going to be doing a lot of gushing over this show. But welcome.
I've just been waiting for the opportunity.
And but you're pinch hitting today for Star Trek author Greg Cox, who Greg is going to be one of the few regulars that I'm going to always, no matter what, I'm going to try to get Greg in here, because Greg has been a Star Trek fan since it premiered when he was a little kid. And he's one of the most knowledgeable Star Trek fans. He just hasn't finished Lower Decks yet. So everybody head to Facebook and shame him for not finishing Lower Decks in time. But someone who did just finish Lower Decks, Issa, and now Issa, I know you as Issa Good Clean Fun. But Issa is the lead vocalist of a very well-known hardcore band, straight edge hardcore band called...
In certain circles, only in certain circles.
But you're also a writer-director. You've made a film before. You're a big film nerd. You literally see every movie that you can, pretty much. And lifelong Star Trek fan. But one of the reasons why you were important to me, because I wanted to get your take on this, is because you do a goofy hardcore band in a very serious genre of music. And that sounded kind of familiar to me. It's something that we're going to be talking about. However, I don't know necessarily if you're as big. I think you are in the skeptical of Lower Decks club with me. So we'll see how this works out. So
I'm curious to see how our notes match up.
Yes. Sarah, let's start off with your Star Trek origin story and we'll go around. And how did you get into Star Trek, and what's your favorite captain and favorite show?
I was 8 years old when TNG premiered. I remember sitting on the floor and watching it Encounter at Farpoint and being absolutely transfixed. It turns out I really needed it too, because I was raised by very religious conservatives. Every day I was told that men have spiritual authority over women and stuff like that. And so for reasons that I think children can sort of pick up on a lot of stuff that they can't necessarily describe or explain to others, but they can understand themselves in their own private language. And as a child, I was absolutely like glued to Star Trek. And it took me probably until my late teens to understand that the reason that I was so drawn to it and would watch it sometimes 7, 8 hours a day when I was homeschooled over and over again, is because it was everything that I was being denied by my upbringing, everything that I was being, it was being hidden from me and taken away from me. And so I was completely obsessed and in love with it. And then, it took me a while to get around to the other Star Treks, because I started with TNG and then I watched the TOS movies also, like ongoing as a kid. The Star Trek Fourth Voyage Home is my absolute favorite. It's not just my favorite Star Trek movie, it's my favorite movie of all time. So it's, I think when Voyager came out, I went through a period briefly where I was sort of disenchanted because it was so obvious what Berman was trying to do with 709, and I was bitter about that. And then I went back to it ultimately, thank God, and, was able to get over it, because I think during the dry Trek period, sort of between Enterprise and the JJ Treks, when I was like, okay, well, I don't have any new Star Trek, so I better give this old stuff a chance, now that I've gotten over myself a little bit. So now I've watched all of it, with the exception of, I have not seen all of the animated series, just because it is sort of geared more toward a younger crowd and wasn't really able to hold my attention. But all of them I love. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses. So.
But now Star Trek 4 is no longer the one with the whales because of Lower Decks. It is one of the ones with whales. But no, that's a much deeper story than mine with Star Trek. Anna, what's your Star Trek origin?
Do the rest of us have to follow that? Because I can't do that.
I have a good story, but it's much more. But
that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So I grew up watching Star Trek and science fiction with my dad from the earliest time that I can remember. And my dad is like a theater and language guy, so we would watch stuff and he would always have a running commentary, just pointing out like tropes and concepts. And so it was both interesting and, as a small child, like very, very annoying. But we started watching TOS reruns when I was like probably 4. And they were just on like 4 channels in the UK. So they were just on once a week on a Thursday. And we would both watch for the concepts, but also like it became part of our household culture to do bits, because Star Trek is so innately funny. And I think like the reason that Voyage Home is so good is that they had really, really, really found their comedic stride and really lent into that. But all of that stuff was like laid in right from the start. So like me and my dad, when I was like 6, we were like running around the house being like, to boldly go where no one has gone before, to seek out new life forms and beat them with broom handles. Because that always seemed to be the end, like meet the new life form, beat them with broom handles. And then TNG happened and I was older and the politics were better. So I think
not in the first 2 seasons. The first 2 seasons.
No, you're completely right. It's very, very terrible. Hugely racist, wildly sexist. But
I would argue season 3 of TOS is better than the first 2 seasons of Next Generation.
You? Okay,
yes, I would argue
watch them side by side.
Yeah, except for a couple episodes.
Bold statement.
Yeah. Oh, I'm full of hot takes. They're coming.
Okay. I mean, I think if you're looking at them as like both their own like journeys, they definitely like they come a long way.
I'm sorry to interrupt your origin, Anna. I'm sorry.
This is my origins. This is important to me.
Yeah, go for it. I'm sorry. I won't do it again.
No, you're all good. Yeah, I think that you can see progress in both of them, and that's interesting enough. Like, because I was brought up in such a progressive way, like I was quite hard on the 80s, 90s Trek stuff, like the way that they so Riker falls in love with an alien who is non-binary, and they end up trying to have a straight relationship. And like I was like in my teens and just being like, but why does it have to be heteronormative? And now I'm like, that was fucking bold for network television. Like at that time. That was so much more forgiving now that I have a bit more space to see what they were working with. But yes.
All right, Issa, your Star Trek origin story.
Okay, well, so I grew up watching the original series in reruns. Thank you. And I, obviously I loved it. It was like my favorite show. I read some books. I can't say that I've read every single book, but I definitely read a lot of the books. And then I've got a few years on you, Sarah. I was in high school when The Next Generation came out. And the first episode was pretty bad.
Yeah.
My reaction when watching it was not, oh my God, this is awesome. It was, wow, I really hope this gets better. But I had enough, I was into the concepts and the ideas of Star Trek. I wasn't going to stop watching. Also, I was a teenager, I had nothing to do. So I definitely kept watching. And I can't remember what season it just became awesome. I did rewatch it relatively recently.
3. All the Bourbon era shows got good at season 3.
Yeah, season 3 was definitely very good. Season 4 had some really good stuff too. But at that point, it was like my favorite show. Like I remember all my friends, we had a big watch party for the premiere of season 4, which is the Borg episode, of course. And it was like that was a cliffhanger. Like you forget. They recently released Best of Both Worlds, like 10 years ago in the theaters. And, I got to see it as like a movie, and that was cool. But you forget, like when it first ran, you had to wait like 5 or 6 months to get the next episode. And that was,
there were rumors that Patrick Stewart wanted out. So,
exactly. You had no idea what was going to happen. Anything could have happened. It was crazy times. And so TNG was definitely my favorite Star Trek show, to the point where I kind of didn't like anything else after it. I mean, Voyager was whatever. Deep Space Nine had some good stuff, but I never loved them the way I loved Next Generation. And so, the movies were sort of hit or miss. I really enjoyed the later Next Gen movies. Like even the ones where you're a little bit like, okay, but they were still really fun. I just liked the characters a lot. And obviously it was like, it was almost like crying watching Picard, just being so excited to see the characters again, so so that's my Star Trek origin, and I like the Whales one.
Yeah, well, my Star Trek origin story, I also first watched the reruns on syndication in the afternoon in Indiana, but here's the thing, I don't know the exact release date, but I think the motion picture came out before Empire Strikes Back.
Oh yeah, a few years before.
Okay, yeah, so that makes the motion picture the first movie I saw in the theater.
Okay.
Because the first 2 memories of seeing movies in the theater that I have are the motion picture and Empire Strikes Back.
You can always tell that the motion picture came out first before Star Wars because of before Empire Strikes Back, because of the incredible obsession that it has visually with A Space Odyssey.
Right. Well, yeah, totally. But so the motion picture, like I don't think at that age, like I was a little kid, I have no idea how bored I must have been in the motion picture.
So bored.
Yes.
Yeah, so bored.
That being said, as an adult, I love the motion picture, and one of my hot takes is that I think it's the most science fiction Star Trek has ever been. And it's one of my favorites. So I will defend the motion picture. However, Wrath of Khan is my favorite, probably, of the movies. And my favorite series is Deep Space Nine. I like all Star Trek pretty much. I like even the animated series. I like all of it to varying degrees. I am a huge science fiction nerd in general. So I grew, and when Issa and I first met each other in the 90s, I was going through a phase where especially when I was in college, the only reading for fun I did was Star Trek novels. And so I read like over 150 Star Trek novels at one point, which was like, and now, unfortunately, even though I'm friends with a lot of the Star Trek authors, I can't read them anymore because I got really burned out on reading Star Trek novels. That being said, I'm a huge fan of all things Star Trek, and I'm a huge defender in the Kurtzman era. In fact, I'll wear my Discovery hat around, and I'm a believer enough in this era that I will argue with the haters left and right. I've had to block people on Twitter because they were so negative about modern Star Trek.
Yep.
And my thing about the modern Star Trek is that I think a lot of these haters can't handle how bold that they have made the Star Trek universe now, in ways that are just completely amazing and surprising. Going 900 years into the future. Okay, I spoiled. Everybody should know that at this point. But taking the universe and going that far ahead, making Picard be as topical as it is, doing a children's show like Prodigy and doing a show like Lower Decks, these are bold swings. And as much as like, especially did not like the two JJ movies myself, so it's not that I can't be critical of Star Trek. I do want to say that I hated Into Darkness, so I can be critical. However, I do love this era. So now that we've talked about that, let's get into Lower Decks. And once we start talking, at this point, it's a free for all. So jump in when you feel the need to.
Okay, I want to go first. So here's the thing. I just picture Lower Decks. I pictured being in the pitch room when they first had the idea, and it was like, okay, I want to do a show about second contact. I want it to be like not the bridge crew. I want it to focus on like, the ensigns that you don't really see, kind of like that Buffy episode where Xander takes the lead and
or like that Lower Decks episode in TNG that's called Lower Decks.
Right, there you go. That's another good example. I just wanted to bring up Buffy.
Except for that's a depressing episode. That's a really sad episode. It's not funny.
Okay. But the concept was hilarious. But so I'd be in that pitch meeting. I'd be like, oh my God, like B Team Second Contact series of Star Trek. That is the best idea I've ever heard. We'll make it kind of funny. We'll reference a lot of the other Star Treks, but it'll be like not following a bridge crew for once. I'd say that's the best idea I've ever heard for a pitch. I cannot wait to see the show. And then someone was like, and we'll make it a cartoon. And that's where I was out. Like, I feel that everything I didn't like about the show was because it was a cartoon.
Interesting. See that? Okay.
So we don't have the same.
No, we're close. We're close. Okay. I'll let other people go before I give my opinion, because I think we need some positivity. So let's go to Anna next. Here
with the posse. I think it's just a really, really, really good Star Trek show. I think it's funny as fuck. I think the first show that is all out designed to be a comedy, and for me, it's a comedy that speaks to like the little kid that was running around the house being like, to boldly go and hit aliens with broomsticks. Like it's all of those little in jokes. And it's very comforting to look at. Like because it looks so much like, because it's TNG era, or just after TNG era. Like it looks so homely to me. And I think the characters are really well drawn.
So I have to add that I've known Anna for 20 years, and if I was trying to design the perfect character for her to like in a show, it would be Beckett Mariner. Like she's got to be your all-time favorite character.
So good.
Well,
she's really, really good.
Yeah, and we'll drill down on the characters a little bit too, because I do want to do that. Sarah, what are your overall feelings on Lower Decks? Because honestly, I've seen you talk about Lower Decks, but I haven't seen you give an overall opinion. So I'm not even sure where you land.
I think, and I've always sort of semi-attributed this to generational differences. It is not a show I can binge because it moves too quickly for my Gen X ass. Like I have to watch 1 or 2 episodes at a time. It's just
very dense.
Talk too quickly. I have to turn on subtitles for sure. I usually have to turn on subtitles anyway. And so it's just like, it's so rapid fire. You could miss so much. All of these references are packed together so tightly. Some of them are just visual references off in the side somewhere. And so you really have to be paying attention. And that combined with how quickly it moves makes it difficult for me to really focus. And it's, to me, I think the brilliance of it is that Star Trek has been around long enough now where it is becoming its own mythology. You think about all of the stories that we have that are, directly from mythology that we've seen recycled every 30 years, stories like Thor, things like that, that have been around for, in some cases, thousands of years. And they change and they grow with the culture, right? And the essence of what it is remains the same. And Star Trek has been around long enough now that it can start to do that. It can play with itself, and that's what it's doing right now. And it's kind of like the being John Malkovich of Star Trek. It's full of memes. It's the perfect show for the meme era, for the internet age that we find ourselves now, because everything is an inside joke, everything is meta. And it's a Star Trek show about Star Trek itself. And so it has all of this flexibility to be creative and to play with the audience, and to say, this is really a show kind of about how the audience sees themselves, because we all see ourselves as nerds, not badasses.
The Lower Deckers are
so,
absolutely fans.
yeah, it's easy to
there's
cast
a little, it's
ourselves
not like
in
fourth
those
wall breaking,
roles.
but it's like fourth wall poking.
Yeah.
Like nerding out about Jadzia Dax, and
Right. Exactly.
they're having the conversations that we have.
Yeah.
There are a whole bunch of like cartoons that are aimed at adults that I just haven't seen, like Rick and Morty, which is one of the creators of Lower Decks. I don't know if you guys have all seen Rick and Morty. I have not, but I definitely have some nerdy friends who love it. But it reminds me of things like Invincible, which was another adult cartoon for adults that came out. It was sort of like a superhero thing that again was good, but would have been better if it wasn't a cartoon. And then
you hate animation, don't you?
Well, I mean, so I want to give my breakdown of how I feel about
just
animation.
Drawings. What's your problem?
Well, okay, so Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was a great movie, like a really, really great movie.
Very good movie.
Really, really good movie. But I have to give it less points than like the other Spider-Man movies because it's a cartoon. Like it just is it's like an Olympic.
It sounds like a bias to me. It sounds like you might have an anti-cartoon.
That's
No,
not my
I do.
problem.
That's what I want to cop to that. I'm not trying to hide my anti-cartoon bias. But what Lower Decks reminded me of more than anything, especially at the very beginning, was Teen Titans Go. And I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's sort of I don't go off track topic here, but it's kind of it's much more aimed at kids and a little sillier, but it's sort of like a meta thing on the DC universe that's very similar to the Lower Decks meta thing on Star Trek. So whatever, I just wanted to throw that out there. But most of what I didn't like about the show was that it was a cartoon, like because there are things that you just do in cartoons that are boring.
Well, see, for me, like I'm not anti that. I mean, the animated series, the original from the 70s, I actually think has some of the best science fiction that the original crew went through. Like there's some really good science fiction episodes.
I mean, I watched it as a kid, but I definitely have not seen it since and could not discuss it with
that.
I haven't seen any, and I would love an episode list offline.
Yeah. Well, there is an episode where they get infected by a thing that turns them into practical jokers, and someone writes Kirk as a jerk on the back of his shirt. And I use that as an example for people who said that, basically it was a lesson for me, because I'll get to why I don't like, one of the reasons I don't like Lower Decks as much as Anna does. And first of all, I should say, unlike a lot of haters, if I don't like something, I'm not going to give people a hard time if they like it. That's one of the things from it took me a while. The first season of Lower Decks, I did not like at all. I did not like it at all. My brain rejected it, and I couldn't watch it. And my first reaction was to tell people, I'm so happy that you love it. I wish I did. I just don't. And the reason why is because I take Star Trek very seriously. And my brain rejected the idea that it was canon. Because it was a cartoon and because people talk like, it's not that it's a cartoon, like Issa just doesn't like animation. I don't like that people talk really fast and they're really animated.
It's like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or something. Like it's a punchline after punchline after punchline.
Yeah.
And so
and the one, but I got used to it a little bit, and then I let go, and I just said, listen, if I laugh really hard at least one time in an episode, like when they mention Kales's fornication helmet or whatever, and I get like a good laugh out of it, then it's worth it to me that I've spent 24 minutes watching it, and it's fine. But my problem is you can't call it canon and then have people make references to episode titles in it. That bugs me, because that's like trying to have your cake and eat it too. Saying it is canon, but we're making references. I'd almost rather that they just do a spoof show and just, and just do it as a spoof. And I admit that may be generational. I get Sarah's putting ammo in her.
I recommend not caring about canon, because I don't care about canon, and it works out really well for me.
And I just want to clarify.
I feel like canon was meant to be broken and fucked with and played with, and the more seriously you take it, the harder of a time you're going to have. And to me, Lower Decks automatically takes place in this sort of half real environment. I can't, even though it's considered canon, I don't take it seriously as, oh yes, this is part of the same universe. But in the same way that I cannot possibly take seriously that TOS and TNG are a part of the same universe. I can't, my brain can't process that. And we all sort of pretend, we all sort of engage in this willing cognitive dissonance. We're like, oh yeah,
I would completely agree with that.
Those totally happen in the same universe. And you're like,
I have no problem.
Absolutely, timeline definitely connected.
I have no problem connecting those, because in my head, like, I can update Klingon makeup in my brain. I can do all that. But when they actually mention the name of an episode in dialogue, it hurts. I can't. That's a
you gotta
problem.
get over that.
I know. I need to. I agree.
I feel like I need to clarify that I actually enjoyed Lower Decks. Like, I did not like it. I'm mostly upset that they missed the opportunity to have like a really great non-cartoon show.
Well, I just want a button that allows me to slow it down. The way that I listen to audiobooks at double speed, I want to be able to watch Lower Decks at, half speed.
Yeah.
That's
my old brain demands.
Again, I would just say the answer is to watch them over and over and over.
I didn't mind the tempo. I felt like it was very modern cartoon tempo, like Family Guy or
But that's the thing though, if you're not used to watching, because that's pretty much why I don't watch those shows. I don't watch Family Guy. I don't watch anything with Seth MacFarlane because he annoys me. He has a punchable face.
So you're going to get really mad when you find out that the Orville is my favorite new Star Trek.
I hate that take. I hate that take. I have problems with that take, but I've already told you that before.
We've talked about it. Yeah. It's so good.
I mean, I like Orville. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I'm the Brandon Braga defender. But
it's lazy. It's lazy sci-fi. It should be so much better, because Seth MacFarlane has such a fantastic brain and such a keen set of observational skills that, like, if he can create Brian the dog and Stewie the baby, why isn't he really delving into sci-fi concepts? Issa's heard me complain about this, but in season 1 of The Orville, and I haven't watched it all.
It gets better. It gets better, but you should keep watching.
Whatever. They did they did first contact on a race that had been kept inside under a big
the generational
skylight. Yeah, and they were just like, the answer is to open it up. Okay, we're off now. And she's like, you had this opportunity to bring all of this humor and all of these skills, these storytelling skills that you have, to sci-fi, and you've done something that's just really lazy.
Fair enough. Some episodes lazier than others,
Yeah, I definitely think Orville got better, and I'm not anti-Orville. I hate the take that it's the best new Star Trek, because it is.
It's just because I wanted more Next Generation, and that is that.
Yeah, I understand.
It's Next Gen fanfic. It's definitely Next Gen fanfic that somebody decided to give a large budget to for reasons unknown. But it also drives me crazy when people say that it's their favorite of the new Treks, because
I'm sorry,
like, no, it's not Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly. It has enough differences that I just can't. I I know it's a goofy take, and then but okay, let's get back to Lower Decks. Anyways, so the thing about Lower Decks that I do really appreciate, and you should know, Issa, because I don't know if you know this, but is it Michael McMahon, who created it? Part of the reason why he was able to pitch Lower Decks is that he had an ongoing thing where he invented a 8th season of Next Generation on Twitter. And he
really?
Yeah. It was
I
just
didn't know that.
It was just this ongoing thing where he created what he would have done for an 8th season of Next Gen on Twitter. And that's how everyone found out that, or I think that's how Kurtzman and crew found out that he was like a massive Star Trek nerd. And they're like, oh, this Rick and Morty guy. And so then I think they wanted to work with him because of that, you know,
right.
Like, and I appreciate that. And like I said, even if I don't really enjoy it that much, or I'm not a huge fan of Lower Decks, I appreciate.
Wait, did you really just not like it because of like references and canon stuff? There had to be more than that, right? Because it's really good if once you get past the cartooniness.
No, well, that's why I said
I feel like you're both hindering yourselves.
No. I shall say it grew on me to the point where the first season, I barely finished it. I watched it eventually. And this season, I watched every episode each week as it came out. So, and I enjoyed it a lot more. And when we get into breaking down the episodes, there's actually episodes that I super appreciated in this season. Some not so much, but I still don't like kind of the yelly character things, and my brain still kind of rejects it, but at the same time, like, I'm just letting go, a lot like what Sarah suggested. I'm just letting go and enjoying it. Now, that being said, like, I actually think Prodigy looks amazing, and I like the take and the direction that they're going. And I'm not anti like a show for kids in the Star Trek universe. I actually think I think that was a brilliant move, actually, to create a new generation of Star Trek fans. And I actually just like the direction they're going with it. And it should be noted that when we're recording this, today is the 1-year anniversary of the Captain Janeway statue in Bloomington, Indiana, which is my hometown because I share a hometown with Captain Janeway.
That's very cool.
Fictional character. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Hey, it's her fictional birthplace, and we have a statue for it, and it's a year old today. So
that is exciting. That is exciting.
I don't see DC having
a lot of statues in the US.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what Star Trek captain came from DC, so I don't know what you've got going there. You have Ian McKay, but that's it. So, and a whole bunch of shitty politicians. But, anyways, Lower Decks. Let's get into like episode by episode. Now, I've seen a lot of people complain about the whole Pakled storyline. And
that was great. I thought that was really fun. It was a perfect villain.
I've been practicing my Pakled impression, not even for this conversation, just around the house.
Well, and maybe that's just, I don't know, but I think a lot of the things with the Pakleds is that I think a lot of people think that they didn't age well as far as the represent of that, you know, like what they represent. And a lot of people are kind of offended by the Pakleds as characters, that they're these big oafy kind of silly, like, and like, how did they get spaceships if they weren't that smart? And people are overthinking it. But what did you guys think about about Boimler going to the Titan and that whole thing? Because I thought that was awesome.
I thought that was great.
Yeah.
It was really funny
that they didn't go on.
Okay, I was just gonna say that you said you didn't like the first season. The first season really picked up towards the end. I thought they kind of found their stride a little bit towards the end, and the like Riker and stuff, that was amazing. Like, I thought that was hilarious. And him being on the Titan, just being like, you know, that whole episode of like, I bet Boimler's, you know, I bet Boimler's having so much fun on the Titan, and then he's like, you know, that was good stuff. Like, I thought that was gold.
Yeah, it was a good joke.
I like that they didn't do a hard reset between seasons, that they weren't like, and that has all gone back to normal now. I like that we actually had to find our way back.
Okay, and then maybe I kind of jumped ahead. Maybe we should talk about the characters as we get into this. because I do think because Star Trek's all about the characters, right? And the crew is a huge part of what you have, and the big enemy mine fan in me is excited that Dennis Quaid's son is the voice of Boimler, but huge enemy mine fan here. The maybe the one, I don't know, but Boimler is a great character. I think his over eagerness makes him the most Starfleet of the lower deckers, obviously, and I think he represents, he's the most traditional of the Star Trek characters, but also his wide-eyed nerdiness makes him, the fact that
At least effective.
well, sometimes not in the Borg simulations, but
no, season 2 he comes into his own, and it's a beautiful payoff for all of his nerdiness through like all of his hard work, and he starts to put all of his book smarts together with like his friendships and his relationships, and you see him like standing up for his relationships. Yeah. Season 2 is a huge payoff for him. He's so good.
Yeah, and Boimler, I think he represents us, the nerds. So like, he a lot of times he's giving voice to the things like, that we would be feeling, which, by the way, it's not the first time Star Trek didn't do this. The Tribbles episode of Deep Space Nine had lots of moments where the characters were geeking out, like meeting Captain Kirk and all that, which you did come around to Deep Space Nine, didn't you, Issa? Like eventually?
No, I never even finished it, to be honest. Like everyone says it gets better and they go off on the Defiant, and I've never seen that. So yeah, I'll get to it someday.
So I've quite recently come back to DS9. I watched a lot of it because I realize now, because I know all of the characters, but I wasn't really paying attention. And on the Pod Directive, Tawny Newsom was talking about how that was her favorite channel of Star Trek, and I was like, oh, I must revisit it. And I think I'm like 3.5 seasons in, and
it's like, just getting going.
Yeah, like it's darker and it's harder, and like it's takes more out of you to watch it, but there's so much in there.
I'll go back
and really I would recommend it. Like,
yeah, I mean, I'm sure
I would start at the beginning. Like, or at least
you kind of have to start at the beginning, even though honestly
it's
the first
so much
season I think
story,
is the worst first season of any Star Trek show. It's so boring, and it takes so long for them to get going where they want. It feels like they're all setting up an abandoned shopping mall for the first season, and you're just like,
they absolutely are. That is 100% what they're doing.
Yes, but I will say also that I think prior to Lower Decks, Deep Space Nine did comedy better than any of the other shows. That like
TNG.
You have not gotten far enough in your rewatch to see the best moments of comedy. The episode, especially now that you've learned the term pinch hitter, there's a baseball episode of Deep Space Nine that is absolutely hilarious.
All Deep Space Nine episodes are baseball episodes.
Yeah.
Well, to a degree, but they play a Vulcan baseball team in Take Me Out. It's called Take Me Out to the Hollow Suite, and it's very funny. But the absolute best episode of Star Trek comedy, in my opinion, is Deep Space Nine, and that's Little Green Men, the one where the Ferengi end up at Roswell. And Quark says when he sees them smoking cigarettes, and he's like, they pay money for poison in this century. We're gonna make a killing. I do think
warm to the Ferengi, like they just instant non-interest.
Well, Deep Space Nine does a really good job of developing the Ferengi past what we were presented with in TNG.
Absolutely,
like it's
so you can't even talk. Don't even talk to me about Ferengi, Issa. If you haven't finished Deep Space Nine,
it's true. You haven't seen the key text.
That is fair. That is totally fair.
So, all right. So the second episode is a big one of this season, and it was definitely a huge moment for Lower Decks, and that's Kayshawn, his eyes open, because now listen, I've been on record that I am not a Darmok fan. It's not one of my favorite episodes of Darmok. Excuse me. I'm not even saying it right. you know, I always make the joke, Darmok when the writers failed is is the joke that I always make.
So disrespectful.
I know. Well, it's, you know, I said
This
I'm
is
full of
why-
hot takes. But
I mean, they predicted meme culture. You can't, I mean,
No, the
And
best
also,
part
it's
about that
very
episode
just
was
linguistically interesting. Like,
yeah.
it puts you up against a culture that does not have any of the same reference points as you.
Yep.
And it takes them way too long to realize they're talking in metaphor. Spoilers.
Yeah.
but the best part was going to high school the next day and having everyone try to talk like that the whole day. That was entertaining.
you went to a better high school than mine.
All right, maybe not everyone.
You mean you and Ken?
Yeah, all right. Me and a few friends. Yeah.
All right, so but Keishon, his eyes open is the first time that we've seen the species again and find out that they now have members in Starfleet, which I was, you know, even though I wasn't a fan of the original episode, that was pretty cool. And
It was great to see. It was great to see the leader's sacrifice come to fruition. That was really satisfying because he sacrificed himself so that his whole race could be intergalactic.
Yeah, I think it would be interstellar at that point. But yeah, and then the storyline with the collector was very funny to me, and that gave us KLS's fornication helmet, which was the loudest laugh for me, because it was just
Safety first.
Yeah, so that, and I think this was the first one where I just like afterwards I enjoyed the episode enough that I was like made sure that the next week I was like, I'm gonna watch Lower Decks right away. So I will say that this is the one that kind of won me over a little bit, where I felt like the references were earned. The story, it was paying off nerds who know the show, and it actually like told a pretty good story.
Wait, timeline issue here. We started talking about characters, then we got distracted into the episodes. But
Yeah.
I think I just want to make the point.
Oh yeah, I'm being a terrible moderator today.
I feel the theme of the show, at least in the first 2 seasons, has been: do you blindly follow orders to be good at Starfleet, or do you wing it and break the rules? And I feel like that's like the main, Boimler versus Mariner.
Yeah.
So that
I would take that even a step further and say that within all of the new Star Trek that we're seeing, we're questioning the perfection of Starfleet, like that you shouldn't trust blindly. And I think that, we're seeing that in Picard. I think it's like woven through Picard, it's woven through Discovery. Like there are flaws in the system and what to like, how to work around them rather than just being.
And that's one of the things that the man baby nerds really don't like about modern Star Trek, actually.
Well, it's fascinating to me because one of the reasons why they're so difficult to talk to and argue with is that they don't understand that everything they're complaining about, almost everything, is a feature, not a bug.
Right.
When they complain about Michael Burnham crying, it's like, oh yes, that's a feature, not a bug. Do you want to return to characters who had implausible psychological responses to traumatic events? Because we are assuming under the hood somewhere that they get their brain zapped after they have a traumatic experience, and then they just reset the button and they're fine the next week. Is that what we're because we know enough now about modern technology.
I love Michael Burnham.
Bullshit.
I think
And if they're going to do that, at least they should mention it, and they should say that is what we are doing. Mention it in the show or whatever. But those early Star Treks were so messy in that they would go through all this stuff, and then they would press the reset button the next week, and they'd be done. And so, every time the haters complain, mostly they're complaining about something that's really, really, really cool. And I think that, a lot of the reasons why TOS and TNG are seen as the most sort of colonialist of the Star Treks is that the Federation, even though they have evil admirals in TNG on occasion and everything, still there's this sense that, okay, well, white Federation is coming in and saving the day from the others. from the aliens.
Mhm.
And that's the pitfall that you have with this kind of show. If you want to have an optimistic space show and the leaders are, white male captains and they're always swooping in and saving the day, guess what? Colonialism comes up really, really fast. And it's really obvious now to watch it. When back in the day, it wasn't, obviously it's not what I was thinking about when I was 8 years old, but they've done a lot to course correct that and the new series and really talk about what would be the weaknesses of a federation and could it actually run without all of this bureaucracy, and wouldn't the flaws in it also go beyond just the errant evil admiral who would then get locked up, but it would be a part of the federation, that weaknesses and flaws and shortcomings would be part of the federation.
Yeah,
I agree with all of that, but I feel that I understand why you don't want to have like the perfect future Federation thing that I actually really liked about Star Trek, but I really dislike like we had this big thing and it was like the dream of a child and it ruined the whole universe, the galaxy. Like that drove me crazy. Like that was the worst thing I've ever seen. To be a little
on Discovery,
to exaggerate a little bit, but it's like they went all dystopian because everything has to be dystopian nowadays, and I did not like that.
Wait, which part do you not like?
The burn, like the whole
the burn, okay.
Exploded and everything died in
Discovery,
a little kid.
The Kelpian kid.
Yeah, right. Like that was, it made me very
I was fine with that. I thought that they told the story well. Like they made it plausible, barring a little bit of the science.
Sure. Plausible, good enough.
I think the one best criticism I've heard of the new Star Treks in general is somebody who said that the new Star Treks, much like the Marvel films, believe that every catastrophe has to be civilization ending, global universe ending event, and that they don't tell enough smaller stories. And I think that's a valid criticism. I'm totally okay writing out the Marvel era and having some of that influence Star Trek, because I think Star Trek is big enough to experiment and have all kinds of creative iterations. And I think we will eventually return to those smaller stories once this Marvel era is over. But it's a valid criticism. Like you that's absolutely correct.
We're going to see the smaller stories of Strange New Worlds, and I'm
they're looking at a much more episodic.
And by the way, that's the series that I'm most excited for, and would probably sacrifice a toe to write for, but that's a whole other thing. But
in case anyone who makes decisions is listening,
yeah, but my whole. I understand your concern with the burn, and it's an interesting thing to talk about as far as. Because I would say that there were times where Star Trek questioned the original series, questioned the Federation and the Prime Directive, but they would always undo it with an episode like Omega Glory, where Kirk is like, doing the preamble to the Constitution wrapped in a flag, and you're like, what the fuck, Gene Roddenberry was that? And then so you would, and also to what you're saying, Sarah, I agree with you. I don't mind Michael Burnham crying a little bit, because the fact that Spock had his brain stolen and replaced, and he's just like, all right, I'm on to the next thing next week, is pretty unrealistic, So if we're going to tell modern stories and we're going to do that, that's fine. But again, it's the same thing of like, we're just having fun. So, you can kind of enjoy it. And yes, you're right. I'm being a terrible moderator because I'm going all over the place. But as far as on the characters, I do think, for Mariner being basically the lead of the show, I do think it is a kind of funny reversal on that she has all the traits to be a great Starfleet officer, but doesn't give a shit. And I thought that was a smart creation by the Lower Decks team to like put her in that position. Her mother being the captain, whatever, it's provided some funny moments. But I do like Mariner as a character overall. I like that they're kind of setting her up to be, it's, I think I loved that she said, I'm not a Kirk in one of the episodes. And I was fine with that, because Kirk would be famous in that era for having been a great captain. But yeah, so I don't know if anybody has anything else they want to say about any of the characters specifically. I really like Rutherford is probably my favorite character because but I'm very worried about him.
I think all the
But
characters
he's
are great.
so upbeat. He's going to be fine.
Yeah, I think obviously they're laying some groundwork for in his cybernetic enhancement, so we'll see what happens there. But no, I think all the characters are great. I especially like the first officer, whose name completely escapes me right now, Ransom. Yeah, he is hilarious, and when they fought to decide who was going to have the duel against the big alien guy, and he did the double fist punch for the first time. That was the funniest moment of the series for me. That was incredible.
And then was yelling ethical stuff.
Yeah, like there was.
I respect your sovereignty.
So that was I really like him. I think all the characters are great. The security guy, the Bajoran security guy, a little one-dimensional.
Shax is brilliant. He's not one-dimensional. He's a completely different character in season 2. He's fantastic.
Everybody loves Shax. That's
amazing.
why they brought him back.
And I'm so pleased he gets to shag the cat.
Yeah.
Like they earned that, the both of them.
Yeah, his naked time moment was pretty hilarious. And then but I love that he yelled fighting fascism is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And that paid off the whole Bajoran thing. That was great. We'll get to what my favorite joke of the whole season was here pretty soon. But yeah, Sarah, do you have any of the characters that you have a specific favorite of before we move into episode 3?
My favorite is either Mariner or Tendi.
Yeah, Tendy's great.
Tendi is so great.
Yeah, and I love that they have it. I like that she said, "I'm not that kind of Orion," and I loved it. It was actually saying like, "Hey, species are different," because obviously, not all humans are alike, and I thought that was a really cool moment. Okay, so episode 3 was a big one for fans because it was we'll always have Tom Paris, and it was the return of a Voyager character. But most importantly, I think a lot of people were overly excited that Boimler had a plate of a Star Trek character. Speaking of somebody who at one time had a Captain Sisko plate on his desk, cannot talk shit. My wife somehow
that they regularly troll Star Trek shit posting for content. I am sorry, I will live and die by this reality. I know for a fact that the writers just sit around once a week on Star Trek shit posting and look for ideas.
Okay, I want to drill down on that in a moment.
Wait, your wife lost the plate?
Yes, my wife lost my Captain Sisko plate in the move, and it got lost. But whatever. So let's drill down on this shit posting thing, because explain for people who might not know what Star Trek shit posting is. It's a very active Star Trek message board on Facebook, correct?
Yeah, there's like 100,000 members. So
yeah, it's very active. And I remember when this episode happened, Sarah, that you very specifically commented this was the episode that made you believe that they were definitely trolling that group looking for material. And can you go further into why you think this episode in particular?
I mean, the thing about Star Trek is that the highest form of loving Star Trek is making fun of Star Trek. And there's just so much to mock lovingly. And so to me, even though sort of a lot of people are very literalist about the idea of what shitposting is, in fact, if they are too literalist about it, they quickly get their asses booed out of the group because, if you come in and decide that you're going to make jokes about pedophilia and Nazis, people are like, what the fuck? Like, there's an art form to shitposting. And luckily, most of the members of the group understand that. but so there's just, and a lot of the content actually is quite wholesome, and sort of makes us all love Star Trek and each other even more. But there are just so many different themes that go on in Star Trek shitposting, and then there will be memes about memes in Star Trek shitposting. So there'll be like a meme with it's like 4 layers deep, and you had to have seen 2 episodes and have been online when the original jokes happened to even remotely get it. And I love that. I mean, I love internet culture in general. And so Star Trek shitposting to me sort of represents the best of what internet culture can be. A bunch of nerds coming in about something very specific who are making fun of something in love for it. And there's honestly just so much to mock in Star Trek. And that's one of the things that makes Lower Decks the automatic, obvious thing for them to do, right? Because you just have so much material. You have 50 years of material, and it's really, really, really good. That's what makes it good. But yeah, I mean, Star Trek shitposting is just, people making fun of Star Trek who love Star Trek. And it's not, most of it's really not mean-spirited. We do get into arguments all the time. But it's, the Alex Kurtzman could tell me to my face that they do not look in Star Trek shitposting, and I'd be like, you're a goddamn liar.
Right. Well, and the plate episode, I think just it really crossed a line, because like the idea that Star Trek fans really do love their plates of their characters and have had them. It's a long running thing. So I
did not know that was a real thing. I had no idea. That's
you can get the Lower Decks one now.
Yeah. Well, no, if you go to conventions, the Star Trek conventions, a lot of times there'll be dealers, and then like and they'll be a whole wall of the plates, and I've seen so many times too. If you watch Star Trek podcasts, they always have them on display. It's like, so Boimler having that was very funny, and it did connect it to Voyager, which was a big move. It was a bold move, bringing back.
He had all the plates from Boy.
Yeah. I was surprised that they didn't have Harry Kim come back and still be an ensign and have like a joke about that.
Well, they sort of did. They were like, he was like all the way down to Kim.
Right. That's true. Now, episode 4 was the one that had my favorite joke of the season, and the one that I thought was and that's the Megatu episode. And first of all, just bringing the Megatu back to Star Trek, and just like how insane it was, how they did it with the Megatu humping things, and that whole thing was just hilarious. But to me, the fact that every time they said its name, they pronounced it another way was such a clever in joke that I made the mistake of trying to, because my wife doesn't like Star Trek, but she didn't mind if I turned on Lower Decks because she'd laugh a couple times. And that one I was like trying to explain, no, you don't understand, like DeForest Kelly said it wrong every time, like when he was filming it. And that's such a clever joke, that in the original series, they didn't mean to accidentally say it different ways. They just did, and they didn't catch it. And so the fact that every single time a person says the Megatu thing a different way, brilliant joke. Only a few people probably got it. Only the most serious nerds got it. But if you got it, it's super hilarious. And to me, that was the biggest nerd payoff of the season, and I loved it.
It was so good. And that they like made it canon within the show. So like as they were landing, Boimler was like, hey, you're not listening to me. They've got several different pronunciations for this. Isn't that interesting?
Right. Right, exactly. They made it canon, and therefore, that was great. And
forced canon.
Yeah. So if you care about that kind of thing, the canon,
which you're working on not doing.
Right. But anybody else have any big feelings on the Megatu episode?
I didn't like that one personally. I thought it was a little too silly. But that's just me.
You gotta let go, see. But you,
I like
dude.
That it was sex. I like that it was sex positive.
Yeah.
Like,
was it?
Is he asserting? No, I think he likes to watch.
Right. Well, and it should be noted that Issa sang for a hardcore band that I rejected for the same reason he rejected that episode. Because to me, hardcore music is very serious stuff. And so when Good Clean Fun put out their first record, I was like, what is this bullshit? They're singing they're making a joke out of hardcore. Like, I
So
can't
if we were a modern band, we would be called like hardcore shit posting, basically. But the idea was we were, vegan straight edge hardcore kids making fun of vegan straight edge hardcore kids. And it's very similar. There's a fine line between, a group making fun of themselves and people being mean. So,
it should be noted that I eventually came around to Good Clean Fun like I did Lortex. But
awesome.
Mostly because I met you and liked you.
Yeah,
But I had a hard time with the band for a long time. So.
Yeah, you were not alone. It was entertaining. I mean, trust me, it was hilarious that people were mad at us. So that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that was the mission. But anyways,
totally.
So Sarah, episode 5, an embarrassment of, is it Duplers? Is that how?
The Duplers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I really loved this episode. Sarah, what did you think of this episode?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Star Trek is that they're often sort of criticized for not being imaginative enough with their aliens. And that comes, I think, from the era of, episode of the week. I actually think that, you look at a lot of episodes, and I remember a couple weeks or months ago, I was watching like a Voyager episode, and they made an alien by literally gluing feathers like that you would buy from Michael's, the craft store, on their heads. And I was just like, wow, did they run out of money that week? I mean,
probably.
And they have a real biped problem, and they have, and I understand, like, they have 55 years, they have, however many goddamn years they have of content, and it's really, really difficult. And it's one of the things that I like about the new era of Star Trek, because they're not, a lot of people are like, oh, but we used to have 50 episodes a season. It's like, well, yes, but you had a lot of filler episodes in order to make that happen. And they were airing on UPN, and the budget was, something stupid. It's really small. And, so, and a lot of the acting, honestly, other than like, they got so fucking lucky to get Patrick Stewart when they did. A lot of actors, Brent Spiner is a really good actor, and they've got really lucky, but a lot of them aren't great at acting. And so we look at all of this, one of the reasons why they're campy and they don't necessarily translate or stand the test of time, you should look back at that stuff and you're like, damn, they just did not have the money to put into this. And so I feel like with the animated, they really do have a lot more options because they can just draw it. And so I really get happy when they do stuff like that at this show, when they really just say, what if Tribbles but a biped that replicated itself because it was embarrassed. And I love that. It was great. That was a great idea.
I really like this episode. This episode also has a perfect example of why I don't like the cartoon format. There's like this 5-minute car chase that is just not something you could do in a non-cartoon, and it just wouldn't, it was not a good scene. Like, it just felt so
it was
boring.
A great scene. Were you not listening to them? They were running commentary on everything that they passed, and it was like running commentary on 50 years of history.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, going through the Vulcan ship was funny, right? Everything else was just like, they're seriously just like on a car chase. Like, it didn't, like, it's sort of like the same complaint I have about
people like car chases. You're just wrong.
Well, it's the same complaint I have about like
it was hilarious because they were mocking car chases.
No, well,
that's why it was great.
It's like Newkirk jumping a motorcycle, like I just don't think of that as Star Trek or interesting. Like, you could have fast forwarded that part and it would have been just as good. But my main point about cartoons is, if you were filming a live actor show, you would never do that scene. There are a lot of scenes like that where it's like, trying to think of good examples.
There's one where Kenny turns Sarah's point, but making it a bad, like, you're just restating what Sarah said.
But her point was about the
creative
alien. But the aliens could be more creative. But the cartoon format also lets you be less creative about certain things. Like, another example, just like Tendi turning into a mantis creature and then having to make her laugh. Like, that would have been forced to be done better if it wasn't a cartoon. There are a lot of things that
I don't know.
It was so good.
By the way, the animated series in the 70s had the same thing. They had really cool aliens because of it. And one of my favorite things in the animated series is there's a scene where they go to the Guardian of Forever, and they're talking to the Federation historian, and he's a full-on bird with wings, and and that's great. He's like, he's a full-on bird, and he's the Federation historian, and that will make the animated series for me all day on Sunday, because they got to do that, and that was cool. So you can talk shit on cartoons all you want, but that is something that is cool.
No, it is good.
We get like Dr. Anna, who's like
it's fucking
like
Pat.
bones squared.
About that.
Yeah, no, 100%. It lets them be more creative with aliens. I'm just saying there are certain scenes that it lets them just be lazy and get away with stuff. So that's all.
Now, embarrassment of duplers. This is the episode, I think, right, where they end up at the bar with when they realize
the Kirk and Spock bar. Yeah,
the Kirk and Spock bar. Which at first I was like, come on, but then I loved the scene when the bridge crew end up there and they realize and then the lower deckers get to figure out that their ship is the lower decks.
Yeah, that was cute.
Of Starfleet, and I thought that was one of the best moments of the season and pays off a lot of stuff. And I almost wish that episode was later in the season, but that's just me being nitpicky. And then I don't really remember much about episode 6, the spy humongous. That was.
I just need to find my battery cable. Please continue. I'm still here.
Yeah.
That's when the spy, I forgot their name. The spies on the ship.
The Pakled spy.
The Pakled spies on the ship and uses the airlock as a bathroom.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that episode, and then they did bring the cat species back. By the way, the cat doctor being there is a payoff from the animated series, because there was a cat female crew member on the bridge of the Enterprise in the original series, animated series. But they still haven't done Eric's, which was the guy who replaced Chekhov with the third arm, which I'm waiting for. They've got to be planning something big for Eric's. They've got to be bringing. He's probably still alive, like hundreds of years later. He could be that old.
Wait, they had the third arm guy with the farm ship.
Yeah, I didn't remember. Was that the first season or?
I don't remember which season it was. It was when Boimler gets half transported and he's making the transporter noise, which was another one of my favorite jokes on the show, where they fix the noise and then he's way less annoying. But
because the noise was the most annoying part, right? Oh yeah,
right, exactly. But that episode, the guy that ran, the captain of the ship that was taken to the farm, had a third arm.
Okay.
I don't know if that was a
he did, didn't he? He was wonderful. I can't remember who played him, but he was great, and he had the spooky laugh. And at the end, he was just like, "Oh no, that's just the way I laugh. Please continue."
One thing too, for those of you who have not watched the animated series, is that they did not pay money to have extra actors. So all the Star Trek actors do all the voices. And it's kind of fun figuring out, oh, that's totally James Doohan, or that's totally Nichelle Nichols, and it's a fun thing. And so then episode 7 was the where pleasant fountains lie. This was the one with the engineers, like royal family, and
Phillips.
The planet with dragons that was settled by Ren Fair people.
Yeah,
that was good.
Right. And then that one was good, but the that also has the sentient supercomputer voiced by Jeffrey Combs, which was great because that puts him into modern Star Trek after playing like a gazillion characters in the Berman era. I still think of him as Herbert West Reanimator, but the super sentient computer, like trying to constantly get them to plug it in, was very funny gag. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
And I like that Mariner didn't trust Boimler, and Boimler, that's a very good coming into his own episode.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this episode from anybody? I will move on then, because the next one is very important.
I love the AI trope. That won't get old for me. It will take a really long time for that to get old. And when they put him away at the end with all the other computers just being like, I will destroy you. Fantastic.
Well, and the reason, one thing that added to me with that one is one of my favorite Star Trek podcasts is I have podcast I listen to called Trekking Through Time and Space, and it's a podcast where a Star Trek fan is teaching a Doctor Who fan about Star Trek, and a Doctor Who fan is teaching them about Doctor Who. And so they're still in the original series for Star Trek, and each week they do an episode, and they've done so many supercomputer episodes. And I immediately tagged them, and I was like, because HT, the Doctor Who fan, she hasn't watched past the original series yet, right? But Jacob, the other host, I was like, they would just had an episode where they were talking about supercomputers like the week that episode came on, so it's very good timing. And I do believe okay, so then the next episode is the I Excretus, which is a huge episode, a big one that we're definitely probably going to get into a lot. This is the one with the consultant who arrives to the Cerritos to put them through the training exercises. This is the most references. This is a genius way to do all kinds of references, because you could do Borg, you could do Naked Time, you could do Mirror Universe, you could do all that. Tendi with the Klingon who's been paralyzed was my favorite moment. Now, starting with Sarah, what was your favorite thing in this episode? Favorite reference that they came to? How did you feel about this episode?
I don't know if I can pick a favorite reference, because the thing about each episode is they're so thick with them that I would have to see them teased out and then be like, oh yes, that one was my favorite. But I mean, I loved the Western bits. I loved the Boimler walking around with Borg babies. I mean, that was actually one of those funny things, because we've always sort of joked in Star Trek ship posting about, like, you know, why did they just leave that baby there in the episode of where they like discover 7 of 9 and there's like baby, and they're just like, oh well, and they just put it back in the drawer, and you're like, what the fuck? And that's one of the running jokes on Star Trek ship posting. And so to watch Boimler running around with an armload of Borg babies is like, oh my god,
that's more proof, I think, of them reading shit posting than the play.
I know,
exactly. Yeah, the Borg babies, I would say, is I you know, I've looked at Star Trek ship posting a little bit, and I've seen the Borg baby commentary before, and so that one I did like get a laugh out of that, saying like, they're definitely paying attention there.
Yeah. And the Borg babies were adorable.
Yeah.
like non-cartoon Borg babies, utterly freaky. Yeah. Cartoon Borg babies, adorable.
Yeah.
I will give you that. That is a point in favor.
Thank you. I will take it.
Yeah, and I thought just the concept of this episode was really brilliant. It's hard to believe how much they got into 24 minutes of that episode. That was the one where I was like, wow, they got a lot in. Just as somebody who's watched since the original series, Naked Time is one of my least favorite episodes of the original series. And so to see Shax just yell Naked Time, like with the was hilarious to me, and like one of those is probably my third favorite joke of the season. And the fact that it was a GIF within like an hour of, you know, that you could get the Naked Time GIF out there, it was great. You knew that was going to get memed, and that was really good. And yeah, I love that episode. So any other?
I really enjoyed Rutherford trying to open the warp core so he could get it, and he couldn't open the thing because it would just burn his hand every time he touched it. And then
because Spock put on gloves immediately, he knocked someone out, took some gloves. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I want to call out the horse stomping on Mariner. Like that was just straight up broad comedy. It was fantastic, and every time I've watched it, I've crack up.
Yeah, no, I thought that episode was that's one that I think I could watch again, which there's not, I mean, for me, Lower Decks, like once I've watched it, I probably won't watch it again. Whereas regular Star Trek, I watch, you know, I wait time, but then I've watched it many times, and that one, you know, it is one that's worth repeating. And now the next one, Wedush, if my Klingon is correct, This was also a really smart episode because this is the one where we got to see the lower decks on in other species, and the Klingon lower decks was amazing. I'm glad I lived long enough to see Targ fart jokes, because that is now a thing, that there are Targ fart jokes. And you know, for me, that episode, just seeing the other lower decks, and I know there's been a lot of talk online that people are convinced that this Vulcan character is coming to the Cerritos.
Definitely.
Yeah.
She's definitely coming to Starfleet, isn't she? So she'll definitely be important. I think they were setting up a whole next generation of like stories for this show.
I think that
we're definitely we're going to follow that young Klingon as well.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And it ties to the larger Pac-Led story, which is good. But
the Pac-Led story is really now just a Klingon story, right?
Yeah.
Like they passed it up the chain.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, it depends on whether they're all dead or not. Like Pac-Led planets has just been exploded.
Right. And this episode is going to be really important, and it's going to go down in history because it premiered the Ritos t-shirt, which you know, which is going to be a big deal. Now, coming up, one of the things when we talk about like how smart Kurtzman and that crew and that era is at like dealing with fans, the Ritos thing, the fact that they had those shirts ready to go was a big deal. But and I know Sarah probably knows this, but I don't know if you two know this, because this is something that happened in Star Trek fandom. But the week that episode 10 came out, the conclusion to this, there were a lot of very active Star Trek Twitter fans who had packages in the mail with Cetacean Ops t-shirts, like
Wow.
It
and
was amazingly fast.
yeah, it was like they were in the mail like the day the episode was released, and I was pretty freaking impressed that the Star Trek, you know, hive mind was
able to move that quickly
and knew that they would be getting all kinds of attention, because every single person on Star Trek Twitter who got one of those boxes immediately is posting pictures in their Cetacean Ops shirts and look what came in the mail. That's really smart. I've never seen Star Wars do shit like that. And I gotta say that was beyond the episode. I just wanted to put a shout out to Star Trek for doing that. That was super smart. And then it made me say, why am I not doing more on Star Trek on Twitter? Because I didn't get shit in the mail. So
also, they really built up the Cetacean Ops joke over a few episodes. I'd have to go back and watch it again to figure out when they first said it, but it was a repeating joke, and it didn't really pay off until the end there, but that was really good.
Yeah.
I feel like because this is kind of my area, like storytelling and marketing, and I get really excited when brands become less precious about their content, and it means that you can do things like this because you're not obsessed with having the full name of the show or the logo on whatever you're producing. It means you can create something that lets people reach through the fourth wall, and let you feel rather than just own things, which I think like Star Trek fans are good at anyway. Like we feel this fandom deeply, but providing stuff that that is a little bit more fluid and a little bit more engaging in that way usually comes from people being less precious about their make their logo bigger, and there's so much, there's an exciting future there, I think.
For example, when I got this hat, this Discovery hat, right, my wife said everyone's going to think you're in the Navy, right?
And you're in San Diego, so
I am in San Diego. But the thing is, I told her, I was like, well, if somebody looks closely at it and if they're a big Star Trek fan, it'll be funnier for that person.
It's encoding stuff. I have Daj's necklace from Picard, and it's made by the jeweler that made the one for the show. And it doesn't say Star Trek on it anywhere, but every now and then someone will see it and be like, oh, Daj's necklace.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of those fun things about it. And Oh, and hey, we're getting an example of like how global this particular panel is because it has gotten dark where Sarah is, and we still have
And
sunlight
dark in
everywhere.
Connecticut.
Yeah. So, and I should say we have Connecticut, Australia,
Yeah.
and then 2 Californias.
I think the sun. I don't think the sun ever sets on this podcast team. So
Yeah.
That's cute. I like it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and it's okay. So that last episode, the first contact, also was a big deal because they brought back Selena Gomez as a captain, and her first introduction in Star Trek: The Next Generation was to accidentally run into Picard, right, or something. And
I had no idea Selena Gomez was in this. I don't even know who did she play.
No, so. Oh,
No,
wait, did I say Selena Gomez? I said,
yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Captain Gomez, you mean?
Captain Gomez. So,
I was really confused.
So it's so funny
The whole
that I
time I was
did
sitting here like, this is because I'm Gen X and I am not familiar
I'm like,
with,
wait, who's Selena
the
Gomez?
young
I think my
kids.
kids like
Okay,
it.
I just, yeah. No, that's only murderers in the building. Okay,
Yeah.
I got it. I'm sorry. So I mean, okay, so go.
We'll edit that out. What was our lead in?
No way am
I
I
don't
editing
think the
that
sun
out.
ever sets on this podcast audio, this podcast channel, whatever, and then just cut to there.
All right, so go. But she was a character who was in one or like 3 minor episodes. She was like just in like a couple scenes in Next Generation, and she was an engineer, and so she's the captain of the other ship here. And I love the concept of them having to take the outer deck plating off in order to be able to get through whatever it was that they were getting. Yeah. And then it was funny too, because I did immediately see memes that went out that said naked time with the ship, which was hilarious. Well done, Star Trek fans. That was very clever too. And but the fact that the Cerritos saves the day there was awesome, and and really set up the crazy ending for the season, and the cliffhanger, and which is good. But so how does everybody else feel about this finale, starting with Sarah? I loved it personally.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great, especially the lead up where, you kind of tell something was going to happen because she's like, I don't want to take the promotion. I'm like, oh shit. And no, I thought it was a great way to, because it again alludes to all of these moments in Star Trek history of, conspiracies going on within the Federation and evil admirals and stuff like that. So
yeah, and we still don't know what's going on with Rutherford, obviously, at the end of it. But
no, that's super exciting.
Yeah. So
and I love how chipper he is about everything. He's like, I think I found out something I shouldn't know. Okay.
Right. I do. Yeah, I do like Rutherford, and I think the science fictional idea that he was afraid to erase the memories of his friend is really cute and a really great moment, and is one of the things.
Allowed for such a wonderful summation when he deleted, and you got all of the flashbacks of him and Tendi.
Yeah.
Just like a 5-second snapshot of their relationship. Really beautiful.
Yeah, and I will say, I also love the cat captain and or the cat doctor, and that whole episode where that was another great joke, that the whole episode was built on getting the thing for her, and all she wanted was the box.
Yeah.
Was such a great cat joke. That
and then the reluctance to hug, and then once they got the hug, like
yeah.
Okay,
I'm okay with this.
Yeah, there's a couple really great cat jokes there.
But back to the ending, I really liked the ending. I thought it was one of the few. My whole cartoon complaint is it has that whole everything is super predictable, and if you don't pay attention for a little while during certain parts, it's not that big a deal because probably nothing important is going to happen. Because it doesn't have the same gravity.
Disagree, but carry on.
Yeah, I know everyone disagrees, but sometimes cartoons can be a little silly. They're a little less serious than non-cartoons. And I thought this was one of the cliffhanger was a surprise. Like, you didn't see that coming. And I thought that was cool. Like, I was actually like surprised, whereas the rest of the show is sort of somewhat predictable as to what's going to happen.
They hadn't over signaled the Packwood Klingon conspiracy stuff. Like, they'd given a very, I love underwriting for stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, they'd given a very gentle nod to it in an episode that was largely about something else.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, no, and I think it worked out pretty well. And I do like what you're saying about the underwriting, because I think, I'm
kind of allergic to exposition. Sorry to cut you off, but like, I get really like, yeah. Go.
Yeah, I get that. And it's hard in science fiction not to do exposition. And actually, we were just having a discussion about the new Dune movie, about how one of the most brilliant film science fiction like world buildings that I've seen in a long time was the desert mouse in Dune, and that the sweat was collecting in its ears, and then that was licking the sweat. Like, that was brilliant world building without saying a word. I think it went over a lot of people's heads, but that's the kind of thing that, it's genius. And I do think that Lower Decks, like, for all of its goofiness, it has really good writing, and it has and people who listen, like, I gave, Kurtzman was involved in writing Into Darkness, and I can't, so I'm not going to say that the guy's, everything that he does is perfect.
I've been working on a defense of the JJ films that one of these days I will actually finish writing. I've been working on it for like 3 years. Thank you.
I really enjoy them as films. Like, I really, really enjoy watching them. There doesn't seem to be like an underlying point to them for me. Like, JJ doesn't seem to want to say anything, but I have watched them a number of times and enjoy them a whole bunch every time.
Yeah, they're fun, but why they could just be not Star Trek, you know what I mean? Like, there's no, I don't know. But wait, I want to back up to Dune for a second. I don't want to be a big nerd or anything, but it's not sweat on the
way too late for that.
Best of luck.
Okay.
Way too late.
It's collecting water from the air, and that's what some beetles do in deserts, Your Honor.
Okay. Yes. All right, fine. Be a nerd about it. But listen, I will say, I'm not completely anti the JJ movies. I actually like the third one.
Which was the third one? That's the Kirk with the motorcycle thing, right?
That would be Beyond with Jayla.
Yeah. I actually like Beyond quite a bit, and then there was plenty of things about it that I liked, and I just really thought the decision to do Khan and Into Darkness was one that was doomed to failure and was just a bad
I'm
move.
here for it. I love original
move.
Khan so much, and I just felt like this was a lovely homage. Again, it didn't really have any deeper meaning to it, which I was sad about. Like, original Khan had so much,
and I can never.
It was Moby Dick.
Issa's heard me complain about this before, but I will never get over why the Enterprise was under the ocean for no reason. It makes no sense. It's just a cool effect.
Because why not? It's just a cool shot. I mean, so you gotta look at it.
How do you feel about being able to just transport yourself across the galaxy?
Well, yes, he knows that. That's the other thing.
That was the stupid thing.
Yeah, the fact that they could transport to Kronos means there's no reason for starships, and it just doesn't make any sense. And my brain rejects it, and I can't help that with Into Darkness. But I will say this: nothing that JJ did in Star Trek is as bad as anything that he did in Rise of Skywalker, which was an absolute abomination. And this coming from a guy who did like Force Awakens, but I cannot take Rise of Skywalker. And so nothing he did in Star Trek was that bad, and I will give him that. But anyways, back to what I was trying to say is, I think Kurtzman is doing a great job of overseeing the writing, and I think Kurtzman is being a great steward of Star Trek. And people who have this rosy image of the Berman era just makes my brain hurt. I mean, I like a lot of that stuff, but that I think a lot of that was despite Rick Berman, and I know
I completely agree with that.
yeah, and look, you know, they were up against a lot doing Star Trek in those days. When I interviewed Brandon Braga, it was funny to me that it was weird that how much he didn't care that he knew he'd written one of the worst episodes of Star Trek when we were talking about Threshold. Like he literally was like, yeah, I wrote one of the worst ones, but you know what? It's like, you can't win them all.
Yeah.
You know, and he had a really funny attitude. Like he was proud of the fact that it had taken, that it was considered one of the worst episodes. Like he's like, yeah, I flew too close to the sun on that one. I get it. And I love that they had that kind of that attitude about like, we know we're making this. And it's different now because when they're writing 13 episodes tops of a season, you can't have as many, you can't have duds. You just can't, like you used to.
Yeah.
And so I think that they've got a little bit more pressure on them, and I think Kurtzman is doing a great job. Okay, so overall thoughts on let's go around and do our overall thoughts on season 2, and then what we're excited about coming down the pike for Star Trek. Starting with Sarah.
I just kind of want to see where they're taking it. You know, I've never been one of those people who sort of looks at what, you know, whatever, who sort of imagines like what I hope that they're going to do next season or whatever. I'm mostly just excited to see wherever they're going to take us. So I'm not really a predictions person, but I've just been really glad that each show is really different. I think also when it was announced that, you know, Discovery did well, so therefore they announced Picard, and then Picard did well, and therefore they announced, and we are getting all of this Star Trek. And I think the only thing I was really worried about is that they would all be too similar, that, you know, that then it would sort of be stretched thin, and that maybe even a lot of the same staff would be working on it, and it would all kind of feel too much the same. And I love the fact that they took it in so many different directions, and that each show is very much its own. It makes me just really happy because there's so much room for experimentation within Star Trek. The core idea is so different. Even though there's so many things out there that are very similar in some ways, it's still like, so even if you look at, you know, the superhero movies, there's only so much you can do with superhero movies. And we really only see them experiment with, you know, when Ragnarok came out. That was the first time I really respected a superhero movie. I would go watch them and be entertained by them and watch them once, and that would be it. That's kind of how I feel about Marvel. But when Ragnarok came out, I was like, this is amazing.
My head's exploding.
When Loki came out, this is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm just so glad that they really are experimenting in real time and not giving a fuck, instead of trying to do the safety route or trying to do the sort of focus group route, you know, where they desperately try to appeal to fans. Because I think Star Trek has already tried to replicate itself multiple times. I think we saw that with Voyager, we saw that with Enterprise, and it's a bad idea. I mean, I love some of that Star Trek, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it was, you know, when you took the sheep Dolly and you made a copy of Dolly, and then you made a copy of Dolly, and it's a bad it's a bad idea. So I'm so happy that all the shows are different, they're all doing their own different things, and, you know, it's just,
I agree. And I, when I interviewed Brandon Braga, he one of the things he said was, he said that he was jealous of their effects budget, and he was jealous of the ability. He did mention, he was like, hey, they are getting to do some really different stuff, and that's really, really cool. Yep. And so, you know, because I think they would have loved to have been able to stretch their wings that much in the Berman era, and they just didn't, you know.
But also Berman clipped his own wings. Like, if you're talking about storytelling, like the way that he pigeonholed his women and like all of that shit, like as soon as you look into that, it's very disheartening and amazing that we have characters like Jadzia Dax actually still be like phenomenal, interesting characters with depth. Despite having to, like, Terry Farrell having to go to Berman's office to get her boobs looked at to see if they were the right size in the costume. Like, yeah, He clipped his
Well,
own
and-
fucking wings.
Yeah, and Brandon said,
Yep.
and I thought this was, he said when I was interviewing him that he fully intended for Seven of Nine to be full Borg. When he first thought of the idea, he wanted her to be full Borg the whole show, like, you know, and the you know, and that was their original envisioning of it. And it's too bad, like, if that had been a transformation that happened over like a couple seasons, think how much better that would have been, you know, like, you know,
Yeah.
would have just been
Yeah, the
great.
transformation. I will never forgive them for that transformation. It was so brutally fast, and it was
It was
so
really fast.
stupid to imagine that a doctor would put her in that outfit with those heels. Absolutely. I mean, it's just,
Yeah, and the whole like 1950, she takes down her hair, and the doctor's like, "Oh, like,
yeah, I know.
fuck you."
Oh God. It's like,
And why
it
does
is
she
the
have to be
single
straight?
most
Like, it's
aggravating, disgusting thing I've seen in
Yeah.
Star Trek, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think nymphomaniac
the doctor does
Vulcans
not get
is
called
pretty
out
bad,
enough for
too.
being an old pervert.
Yeah.
I think
Like,
that
I understand he's got comedic chops, but he's an old pervert. The character was written as an old pervert and played as an old pervert.
Interesting. Well, all right. So the future of Star Trek. Anna, what your overall thoughts in the future and where we go from here?
I'm enjoying a couple of sort of tropes that we're seeing, and a couple of like Sarah, I've no wants to guess what happens next. I like to go in completely blind. I want to see like full I don't want to know anything. Surprise me, like full immersion if possible. But I love the way some of the shows, particularly Picard and Discovery, and I guess Lower Decks, do like a bait and switch, but in a really positive way. So like we season 1 of Discovery, we didn't see Hugh and his husband kiss for a really long time, and it was like, okay, so what are you doing with this? And they were laying in the foundations for those characters, and then the kiss was a big reward, and then when they killed off Hugh, it was like, are you fucking kidding me? Are we burying our gays? And no, they weren't. Like they had a longer game to it, and the same with Berman crying. I feel like that was a bait and switch that I was here for. Like when I first watched the first couple of episodes and Berman was crying and they killed off the female captain, I was just like, are you kidding me? And I didn't watch Discovery for like until near the end of the season, and a good friend of mine was like, you should really revisit that. And then I was all in. But I'm here for that, and I have a lot of trust for what they're doing with the universe at the moment.
Yeah, I've been telling people that you have to really give this Star Trek time, because a lot of times when you think they're doing what they're doing, they're not. And
And you gotta
They're
be
doing
here for
amazing
that.
switcheroos.
You
Yeah.
gotta be here for that. You gotta love
Yeah.
it, you know?
yeah. Issa.
I want to talk about how on the more industry-wide level, there's like a move towards shared universes, and Star Trek was sort of one of the early examples of that. And then, obviously all the Star Trek stuff took place in the same universe. We'll put aside the alternate universe stuff of the J.J. Abrams era, but whatever.
And the mirror universes.
Yeah. And I think, Marvel, obviously, Sarah, the Marvel movies are like my favorite thing ever. Like I've been waiting my whole life for these movies to be made. Just to go backwards a second here, I was a comic book nerd as a kid. And every once in a while there'd be a comic. I used to do comic conventions. There used to be, sometimes they would match them up with the Star Trek convention, and we'd take place in the same thing in the same hotel. Yeah. And it would be like, are you here for the Star Trek convention? Like, no,
I'm here for everything.
Those nerds. I'm with the comic people. And obviously there's some crossover there, but I feel that if Star Trek can go, the way of the MCU or whatever, and be this thing that tells a bunch of different stories that all kind of fit together, but don't have to all fit together and all can be very different, I think that would be fantastic. And that's what they're doing pretty much. And just to, now that I feel that everyone's listened to me talk about for 2 hours the cartoon thing and maybe understands my point a little more there, I mostly just want it to be, I like my Star Trek a little more serious, I guess. And I don't mind it funny. Like Orville works great for me. I think it's hilarious, and it also works as like a Star Trek show, even though I understand it's not a Star Trek show. But I mean, it's like saying, that Oasis is your favorite band, but you hate the Beatles, I mean, Orville's basically Star
No, it's
Trek
not.
generation.
And, just after like Liverpudlian knock that shit down.
Okay,
That's
all right,
not
whatever.
true. That was a terrible, terrible simile. Carry on.
Wait, because you like Oasis or you don't like Oasis?
Because I'm from Liverpool and I grew up on the Beatles.
Yeah, right. But you understand that Oasis is like a there are no
Nobody
Beatles,
gives
no
a hoot
Oasis.
about Oasis. They're very boring.
Okay. Anyway,
Like the Orville.
Okay,
that was intentionally harsh.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so I'm excited. I am very excited to see how it goes. I've really enjoyed all the new Star Trek stuff. I have my complaints, but I feel like it's more, it's to the point where it's like my favorite things, but I still wish they were better. And I know that's sort of like an unfair thing to say, but like just to take Picard as an example, they could have spread that out a lot more, and I think it would have been a lot better for it. I don't know why it was so rushed. I don't know what the production decisions behind that were, but
I don't know that they were sure Patrick Stewart would do another season.
yeah, that would be my guess without knowing anything else about it. But like they had a lot of great concepts in there that they would quickly just gloss over, and it was really good though. I still loved it. So everything I complain with a grain of salt. I'm complaining, but I still love it. So
yeah.
I'm excited for more. And I also don't really care where they go as long as it's good. Like there's no, a lot of people think that, people talk about burnout, like, oh, we can't have too much Star Wars, or, oh, we can't have too much this or that. As long as it's good, you can have as much of it. Just don't make it bad. Like just keep making it good, and you could do one movie a week or whatever, So I'm excited for more.
Yeah, I would like to, and I believe this is an opinion that Sarah might share with me, but I'm not sure. I would love to see, maybe it was you that said this, maybe it wasn't, but I know one of my Star Trek friends said it, they agreed with me, which is that I would love to see more non-Starfleet shows. I'd like to see shows set in the Star Trek universe that are not all Starfleet crews. In fact, if they said, hey, David, you get a Star Trek show, you can do whatever you want, I would be doing Jake Sisko as an investigative reporter, like going around the Federation in a heartbeat. I would love to see like that show, where he's not affiliated with anybody, just like going around doing investigations. I think that would be, because then you could do story of the week, you could do mythology, you could do both, And
you never realize how sort of white people centric Star Trek is until you float some of these ideas, and you see how you can feel that internal response where it's like, oh wow, that would be really different. And it's like when you start asking yourself why, like, I mean, Michael Dorn has said, I would love to do a Worf show, and we would love that. And yet
that'd be incredible.
How likely is it that something like that would be bankrolled? And it's very frustrating. And so I feel like there's a lot of subtext to the haters, and what they're really saying is they miss that sweet colonialism because they were the heroes. Sorry.
That's what the haters are always saying. Like that's always the hater subtext.
Why isn't this like what I remember? And it's hilarious when they're like, saying that it's not very Roddenberry or whatever, and it's like, well, first of all, Roddenberry was like developing edict pins so he could sell them on through the mail, like while he was doing the show. So like, don't make him out to be the biggest saint in the universe either. But like, whatever. Anyways, my overall feelings on Lower Decks I've made pretty clear. I'm getting with it, but it's not my favorite. I cannot wait for proper Star Trek to come back. And Discovery is what I'm probably most excited about, the next season of Discovery.
You have now said in this podcast that you are the most excited about 3 different shows. You said you're most excited about the other cartoon, I forget the name of the
No, I'm excited for that one.
You're right. You're excited for Strange New Worlds, and you're most excited for Discovery. That's 3. That's all of them.
No, I didn't say Picard. But I am excited for Picard. Well, I would say probably the most would be Strange New Worlds, because Captain Pike is my Captain Pike in the second season of Discovery is pretty much my favorite captain, like ever.
She's good. I'm excited for number one because she's like, and I feel like, I don't know if this is her choice or not, but I feel she's an underused actor. And she's so talented. Rebecca Romaine, right?
Yeah.
Like, she's so good. I'm so looking forward to seeing her like in a position of authority.
Well, and I just felt like with Captain Pike, they just nailed a character being like a perfect Starfleet captain, and I just love that they won me over on Captain Pike when he walked onto the bridge and said, "What shitstorm have we walked into now?" And when he said that, I was completely sold on Captain Pike, and I was like, "All right, I get this guy now. I get where it's going," and I can't wait for Strange New Worlds. But yes, I am excited for Prodigy too. I expect to like Prodigy more than Lower Decks, because I do feel like, I like that they've said that they're not dumbing it down, and that that not every kid who watches it is going to get it, but the ones that do are like perfectly who they want to reach,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
also,
I'm excited to see
is going to get better and better. Like, I think
absolutely
keeps going, it's going to keep getting better.
Yeah,
it's all
and
Star
I'm
Trek.
excited.
Yeah,
I said that I was not excited to see where things are going, but that's not true. I'm really excited to see like Discovery gave us a black couple saving the fucking universe last season. Like, let's have more of that, and let's have Michael as the like very talented but slightly imperfect captain. And maybe this will get us our Michael Dorn show. Like, let's get representation on TV so we can get better TV.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think Prodigy too, like, I know some people I'm excited about Janeway being on the show ish.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that that there's no humans on the crew. I think that's great.
I did not know that. I've gone out of my way to avoid any knowledge other than Janeway about this. So I'm excited about that too now.
I just want to say that I have a rule that when white people are sitting around talking about adding more inclusion into shows, I just sit back and let them talk about it. But I appreciate that. And Star Trek has always been ahead of the time, which is good, and I hope it just continues to do that.
Yeah. I rewatched the motion pictures recently, and like, if you're just looking at, again, sort of being more forgiving about what they were able to do in the past, like if you're looking at the background casting, like, it's very diverse, like all the secondary characters, which very important for just getting people fucking paid. But yes, hopefully more bridge crew.
And I do love that George Takei had refused to take a demotion to come back. That once his character made captain, he was like, fuck no, I'm not flying the ship again. You put me in the chair or I'm not coming back. And I love that. And and for that reason, and that story was why Sonequa Martin Green said that she wouldn't sit in the chair until she got the promotion on the show. And so if you notice in Discovery, she never sit, like, even when they give her command of the bridge, she would not.
She walks around.
She stood there. She would not sit in the chair.
I didn't know that story. That's funny.
Yeah. She refused to, and it was because of the George Takei story that she heard that when he said he wouldn't give up the chair, and that was what inspired her to be like, I'm not, until my character gets that nod, I'm not doing that.
And her journey to captain was great. Like, a bunch of people said that they thumped it, but I thought it was just really positive and human, and showed, like, I think we're really bad at showing good leadership on TV and and the facets of that. And her learning curve to like giving it to Saru and then being like, oh no, actually this is me and I can do this, was
good stuff. Also, just while we're on it, Saru is probably my favorite new character of all the entire new Star Trek stuff, or maybe the old stuff too. Like, what a great character.
Yeah,
great character.
Doug Jones is amazing.
Yep. And he's from Indiana, so I got
Congratulations.
Hey, Hoosiers do cool stuff, they just don't do it in Indiana. That's the Kurt Vonnegut quote, because he was from Indiana as well. I believe it was Cat's Cradle. It was in the book. He said Hoosiers do wonderful things, just not in Indiana. But anywho, on that note, does anybody have any final words they want to say before? And hopefully we'll see each other again. Either I'm not going to say it's going to be the same crew every time, but I'm definitely everyone's welcome back and is going to be there. So, and if there are shows that you're like super passionate about, let me know, because we're gonna keep I want to keep the Star Trek discussion going. I love Star Trek and it's so much fun to talk about, and you guys were awesome. So anybody any closing thoughts?
No, just thank you. I'm glad that we got to have this conversation, and I hope your
this was great.
listeners enjoyed it too.
Yeah, I think you guys did awesome. Anna, anything from Australia?
I would like them to make the boots that the lower decks crew wear with the delta on the sole. I would like to own a pair of them.
Yeah, let's put the word out there. Alex Kurtzman, if you're listening, get some boot makers.
Get me those goddamn boots. I need them.
Sarah, close us out.
I got nothing. I'm just there's nothing more that I would enjoy doing on a Sunday afternoon than nerding out with Star Trek fans. So I'm having a good day.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll talk to you after Star Trek Prodigy, because I believe that is next. So yeah. But if anybody, my podcast has all kinds of panels, discussions, and things going on and non-Star Trek related, lots of authors, including best-selling authors and so on and so forth. Like, subscribe, and all that bullshit. And please come back. Thanks.